Huberberg. If FERC is concerned with environmental impacts, they should also be concerned with health effects. My name is Peter Huberberg. Last name is Hudiburg. And they should also be looking at the pipeline full build-out, running through a gas field where gas will be taken off to feed certain areas and pumped in from wells developed in other areas in the gas fields. Therefore, they should be looking at extra compressor stations that would be required.
Right.
And from what I understand, in Susquehanna County, they're installing compressor stations or plan to install them every 2 to 4 miles. So I think we're a little bit off the beam when we assume that there's going to be only one compressor station involved in the Constitution pipeline. Now, looking at the compressor stations, we should be aware of what Pennsylvania Alliance for Clean Water and Air has documented in their extensive research of people impacted by pollution, air and water pollution from gas wells, from waste pits, and from compressor stations. Now, here are just some of the impacts that the Pennsylvania Alliance has documented. In Carmichael, Pennsylvania, Pam Judy is suffering from headaches, fatigue, dizziness, nausea, nosebleeds. Blood tests show exposure to benzene and other chemicals. She's 780 feet away from a compressor station. In Dish, Texas, air pollution has been documented. Major sources of that air pollution are the compressor stations. Megan Collins is suffering from sinus issues, difficulty with balance and standing, headaches, fainting, dystonia, ataxia, and nausea. Susan Hare in Morrisania Mesa, Colorado, she's close to gas wells and compressor stations. She's suffering from nosebleeds, itching of her eyes, face, coughing, leg, nerve inflammation that has hindered her ability to walk, and other symptoms. In Blanco, New Mexico, Nancy Pittman is suffering from soft tissue, nose, throat, and mouth irritation and coughing. She lives close to a compressor station. Lloyd Burgess in Texas, he lives close to a compressor station. His animals are suffering. Horses have become sick, they've died, they've suffered from neurological defects and blindness, in some cases in both eyes. Another compressor station impact from Dish, Texas. Charles Morgan. He's suffering from constant low-frequency roar from the compressors, has twice experienced ruptured right eardrum. A neighbor who lives on the other side of the compressor station confirmed he and his infant daughter also suffered ruptured eardrums. It's from constant low-frequency noise. Again, in Dish, Texas, compressor stations, 130 in the county, no less. So the air pollution is very serious. Let's see. Sharon Ward is suffering from headaches, dizziness, ringing of the ears, lack of sleep, and her symptoms are shared by many others in the county. In Justin, Texas, Kenneth Bateman and his son live close to a compressor station and high-pressure pipeline. The source is noise as well as air pollution, and their symptoms are they're suffering from diabetes and other health ailments. In Bradford County, Pennsylvania, Yvonne Schaefer is suffering from headaches. She lives close to a pumping station and stripping plant. And of course, that goes along with pipelines and with gas buildup. In Denton County, Texas, John and Jamie Seislow are suffering from headaches, respiratory problems, and other symptoms. They live close to Williams drilling operation and compressor stations. You know, I think that FERC should also look at the performance record of these of these companies. You know, Cabot does not have a sterling record of performance. It's closer down the line. In Dimmock, Pennsylvania, of course, Cabot gas wells. Many people are suffering from headaches, soreness, dizziness. In this specific instance, this Greg and Julie Saltner and daughter. They've chosen to move out of the state. In Bartonville, Texas, Kelly Grant lives close to a compressor station and a gas well near his house, and he suffers from severe asthma attacks, dizzy spells, and headaches. In Hill County, Texas, Brian Beadle lives close to Williams gas wells. Yeah, and his goats and llamas are suffering swelling and death. So there's another instance of bad performance by one of the companies involved in this proposal. In Washington County, Pennsylvania, Stephanie Hollowich and her family suffered burning eyes, sore throats, and other symptoms from range resources, natural gas wells, gas processing plant, compressor station, and buried pipelines. All of this comes with a pipeline development. Lewis Meeks in Pavilion, Wyoming. He lives close to Encana wells, waste ponds, compressor station, and a high-pressure pipeline. His symptoms are diabetes, lesions, sores, and neuropathy, and chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And his wife, Donna, has endured 8 operations for polyps in her lungs. 2 of his horses have died. In Tisch, Texas, again, Warren and Rebecca Sheffield live close to a compressor station, and their symptoms are multiple chemical sensitivities, vertigo, children easily winded, vomiting, hives, itchy skin, nosebleeds, and seizure. So all of these are documented instances of severe health impacts from gas pipeline and gas field development. And I think that you should be looking at the whole picture. When you're talking about looking at a pipeline going through a particular area, you should assume that in the future there's going to be a major build-out of gas fields. Therefore, there are going to be many other impacts. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not sure I'm saying this correctly. Pat Blanche. Pat Blanche.
Can you hear me? Yes, my name is Pat Lash, L-A-S-C-H. And I'm a bit nervous, because I don't speak in public. When I do, I call it sorry. Before I start my speech, I want to say I spent 2 months out in LA, traveling 30 miles a day, seeing my daughter in intensive care for 2 months. On 12 million highways, 6 in each direction. And it took me 3.5 hours to commute there. I came home here looking for my refuge and going to my animals and my pond to recoup myself and to collect my well-being again. And discovered that the pipeline was intended to go across the street from my sanctuary. My heart sank after 2 months of combating severe depression with a very seriously ill daughter to come home to find that my home was no longer a refuge. On top of that, I had concerns, and I forgot my reading glasses. I brought the wrong ones. My land has 2 wells, a spring-fed pond, and about an acre of swampland. I'm requesting a study of the effects of still water in the dry spell? What's going to happen to my pond, my catfish? We're in an orange zone for earthquakes. What happens when they really start blasting? I'm requesting a study of the effects on the environment regarding erosion of all of the trees above. I live on the downside of where they're going to be putting the pipeline. What will happen to the beaver ponds? There's two of them, beaver lakes at the bottom of that ridge. How will the roads bear the weight and frequency of the trips? And lastly, I'm a retired teacher. I live on a small pension. And what I've done to supplement my income, I'm 68, is to have baseball families rent my home in the summertime. And it's been a pleasure. They come, and I had a family say to me, it was so wonderful being here. Our children that weren't in the camp would have had a terrible time being in town. The pond made everything for us. Concerns regarding explosions, insuring our homes, and the devaluation of our homes need to be studied and properly evaluated. And lastly, I implore all the people here to ask why our representatives have allowed these companies to have proprietary chemicals where they don't have to tell us what they're putting in the ground. I thank you on behalf of my herons, my beavers, my deer, my pheasant, hawks, catfish, bass, and all of our animal friends and humans on Gulf Road, and even the raccoons. Thank you. Thank you.
Craig Stevens. Craig Stevens.
Evening, folks. Thank you for having this opportunity or providing up for us to speak. My name is Craig, C-R-A-I-G, Stevens, S-T-E-V-E-N-S. I live in Silver Lake Township, Pennsylvania. Why am I here? I feel like a suicide prevention hotline intervener. I'm trying to convince people here in New York State after watching what my father's ancestral home state. I'm a sixth-generation landowner in Pennsylvania. I happen to be a fifth generation. My mother was born in West Wiggley, New York. I can't watch what happened to my father's state happen to my mother's home state. Matter of fact, when we get done to shut the industry down here in New York, I'm going to have some people here come and help me get some surgeons here, help me cut that cancer out of the state of Pennsylvania. We need it. That's the information I was given by the Constitution line on May 17, 2002. It says right here in it that this Constitution pipeline starts at the Williams Field Services Company, LLC's planned Central Station in Susquehanna County, Pennsylvania. Although to this date, we cannot get Williams to admit that that is the start and that compressor station will be used. We're confused. I have 1/2 mile, 2,400 feet of what was the laser gathering line put across my property. My family allowed that to happen. Do not, I repeat, do not give any company, let alone Williams, eminent domain capability. If you do, there's 18 enumerated powers in this little document called the Constitution. One of them is Amendment 5 that says, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. How do you compensate people when the partners they're in bed with, that is water from one of the victims endemic, that's Ray Kimball's water. It's not just the color that concerns me. It's the 3 types of uranium that Duke University found in the water, including weapons grade 238. It's the 3 types of thorium. I don't even know what thorium is. I think it's what Thor drinks for breakfast to be strong. How about barium, radium, strontium, arsenic in high enough levels, methane contamination. And you know what you'll hear the industry say? Cabot didn't do that. That's their partner, 25% partner. I have a consent order agreement right here, signed by Dan Dinges, the CEO of Cabot Oil and Gas. The DEP and the state of Pennsylvania found them guilty of contaminating the water endemic.
We agree.
And I'm tired of the industry saying that that's all been taken care of. Here's my problem with it. They agreed and signed this. Cabot hereby certifies that it has entered in this consent order and settlement agreement freely under no coercion of any kind and after consulting with counsel. As identified, Cabot hereby agrees to comply with all of its obligations under this consent order and settlement agreement, and Cabot intends to be legally bound by this consent order and settlement agreement. Why do they keep going in public and saying they did nothing wrong endemic when their CEO twice signed these documents to say that they were guilty? Have they cleaned up their mess after 4 years? No, they have not. I'm here to demand that cleanup. Do not let this pipeline be built at all, and tell Cabot to fix their messes in the state of Pennsylvania before they try to come and do another mess in the state of New York. Now, as a partner now with Williams has been somewhat attentive to our needs on our property, cleaning up the mess left behind by the people they bought from, which was Laser. Now, it was very interesting that they only offered us $5 a foot and a lifetime easement on the original agreement. And they thought they were going to get public utility status to get certificate of public convenience. They actually had a lot of my neighbors sign at that low dollar, $5 a foot and lifetime easement because they told them they were going to get that. They did not get it. You know why? People like me and other neighbors stood up and told the PUC, none of this gas is staying where we live and it's going to go elsewhere. Look at what they're building right now. This is from my extraction colony neighborhood in northeastern PA. It's not staying there. It's not even staying in New York. It's going straight through this 30-inch line. It's going to hit Albany and go to 2 places, Long Island Harbor and Boston Harbor. Oh, it's for New York and Boston. Hey, New York and Boston, if you need gas, drill in your own backyard and quit drilling in my backyard. Now, let's talk about why we don't give eminent domain and let these guys start driving, because you've never seen anything like installation of pipelines before. It's all kinds of fun. Don't ask my neighbor John Jones. Matter of fact, you can't. He was crushed to death by a 40-ton mud truck when that mud truck driver ran a stop sign and rolled it over on his Subaru on July 29th of last year, 2011. John Jones was 57 years old. Sitting next to him was his 17-year-old daughter, who was not crushed to death, who got to watch her father die over the next 5 minutes while he was crushed into the side of the car. That driver was from Texas. That driver got out of his truck, was taken to the hospital, and when he was done, he went back to Texas, has never been heard from again, and is not even in our area to stand trial for what he did to John Jones. We're tired of this. This is putting lives on the line. When they blew out the creek in my backyard installing this pipeline, they were boring underneath my neighbor's property, not even on my own. Laurel Lake Creek, which should have been an exceptional value watershed leading into Silver Creek, which by the way goes into the Susquehanna River and goes straight up to Binghamton, they blew the bottom of that creek out on July 29th, turned my beautiful creek on my property in my backyard into the old Mississippi muddy. And I'm tired of watching this happen to creek after creek, stream after stream, and river after river. You know what? It sounds neat and it looks good on paper. They're just going to dig a trench, drop a pipe in. They spent 2.5 months on my private property, my 115-acre property. The owner, Tom Karam, called it the nightmare of the entire 33-mile line. We caught them dumping 100,000 gallons of liquid of unknown origin, not starting from my property, not emanating from it. They brought these trucks up from elsewhere, thought they were getting away with something by driving it up a dirt road and dumping these trucks loads of liquid of unknown origin. It was the drilling mud and gel right onto my private property. Now, I called the DEP like you probably would. That's our Department of Environmental Protection. We call it. don't expect protection, because we've never gotten any from them, we never will. I demanded that they come up and look at my property. They did 4 times and told me there was absolutely nothing wrong and nothing out of the ordinary had been done. I called up the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission. They came up and said, hey, we've just had these floods, and more than likely the mud in your creek is from the flooding and the runoff from the flooding. I said, you know, the creeks stay muddy even for days and weeks after the rain stops. So what did the Fish and Boat do? They actually went up, unlike the DEP, and found problems. They filed 5 criminal charges against Laser and fined them $20,000 and collected it. When they notified me, they also told me that the DEP was planning to do the same thing. I thought, hallelujah, finally somebody listened. I said, why criminal charges? Why criminal charges? We get paid a hell of a lot faster when we file criminal charges against the company than when we file civil charges. Now, isn't that interesting? Now the DEP and the Fish and Boat found out they did contaminate my creek in the backyard, and they did contaminate my property. And what did they do? They cited them and fined them. So when I called the DEP and Fish and Boat and said, please come now and clean up my property since I pay the taxes for your organization, guess what they told me? We can't. We've settled with the company. We have nothing for you, the deeded private property owner. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Now, here's why I'm here today. I believe in the Constitution of the United States of America. I have rights as a private property owner, and so do every one of the people along this 120-mile line. We will not stand by and watch eminent domain be used for the 22 miles, which is 22% of the length of this in the state of Pennsylvania, and you absolutely will not give them the right to use it in the over 100 miles that is here in New York State. Why? For the very reason that their job is to get this property. This is a FERC line. There is no setbacks. 0. They can run that 30-inch high-pressure gas line right underneath a home or the swing set in the backyard where children play, and there's nothing the landowner can do. Once FERC gives eminent domain, they can put the pipeline wherever they damn well please without anybody's else permission of the property owner. They will give them a few bucks a foot because that's what FERC said they could do, and they're going to say thanks for playing. And when they're done, wait till you see what happens when the first rain happens. We had the floods. Never before in our area, and my family's been there for over 180 years, did anybody in that area see the mud flow like that it did after the rains happened. When you strip the trees, my forester caught them dumping this liquid of unknown origin on my property. I asked him about what he saw. Where he lives in New Albany, Pennsylvania area, this is a 62-year-old hardened forester who cried like a baby watching them along the pipeline route cut a tree he said was probably worth $5,000 if it was kept whole, and they put it through a wood chipper. We're not interested in our forests, our beautiful wetlands, being cut down and put through wood chippers to make room for a pipeline to do what? Take our resources from our areas and transport them not only to major cities in the United States, but how about to places like India, Russia, China, Japan, and Norway, who right now today are ready to pay top dollar for that liquefied natural gas.
It's not going to happen.
Please, FERC, don't fall for what Eddie Murphy affectionately called in the Beverly Hills Cop movie, the banana and the tailpipe, or I'll say the banana and the 30-inch pipeline, because we're not falling for it, and we will not stand for it. You have an obligation to protect us, the citizens of the United States of America, and we are not going to put up with another lie from the industry as what's happening with this. Thank you very much for your time, and I pray to God you make the right decision.
Nick Albaugh, A-L-B-A-U-G-H, Hamden, New York. I don't know what we're doing here tonight, since you tell us the electronic filings have as much impact as the personal filings do. So taking you on your word for that, I'm going to talk to you face to face. Not about technical data, we'll file that electronically. Everybody has to make a living. Unfortunately, too many livings are dependent on mineral extraction, which today means extreme practices supported by powerful lobbies, privileged access, legislative subsidies and exemptions, and freewheeling finance. None of us can escape our roles in this. In fact, some of our salaries are reimbursed by permitting fees. We can tell ourselves we are only doing our job, but anyone who knows how the industry operates knows better. And as long as we are plugged into this operation as producers, regulators, workers in the stream, or consumers, the best we can do as decent human beings is draw a line somewhere when that operation runs afoul of basic human values. That line is clearly drawn here in New York, where, a couple of LDCs aside, we reject fracking and its entire infrastructure.
That's right.
Including this pipeline. We don't want it. We are pledged to resist it.
Yes.
And instead of an industrial wasteland, we choose to protect a countryside and a way of life, a transforming economy of alternate agriculture and forestry, animal husbandry, and local businesses responsible to their community. All the specific comments that are filed regarding the ice reduce to that proposition. This is the opportunity for Williams Cabot to understand the breadth and the intensity of our resistance and to withdraw this proposal for a speculative asset. Before they waste millions more trying to foist this folly on a people who will not accept it.
That's right.
It is also an opportunity for FERC to exercise wisely and in the real public interest whatever authority it retains outside the political influence that has corrupted regulation and oversight. The Superfund started in New York with Love Canal. In that tragedy, industry was comparatively straightforward when it conveyed its toxic property to the municipality. The real onus of the crime lay on the heads of local officials who, as the story keeps repeating itself, thought they were getting something for nothing. It's the same mentality that characterized some of our local officials today, in a scenario, however, that's far more complex and corrupt than that in 1953. But we are gaining in the realignment of that attitude, just as we have contributed to the growing public recognition of the nature of fracking, starting in these small towns and counties, going to a state level, to a national level, and the global awareness. Everyone has to make a living. The question is where we draw the line. And to those of you sitting on the stage today, we urge a question. Years from now, when your children and grandchildren ask, as they will, what part you played in the struggle for all creation, how will you answer?
late. Extend the comment period tonight. Go late. Let everyone here be heard.
But please keep in mind, the longer you talk and interrupt, the less time we will have. So at some point, we'll have to end, so just please keep your comments short, summarize them, and provide them in a hard copy, and please don't interrupt so the person can finish the comments that they do have.
Carol Marner.
Let everyone here be heard tonight.
I am from Delaware County, and I'm going to be 75 next month, and all this traveling around is a bit hard for me, and that's what I've been doing ever since, not speaking to it, ever since this whole horror started in 2008. Before any approval of any new additions to the nation's pipeline system is decided, the pipeline we now have, dysfunctional and aging and uncharted, must be made functional, dependable, and most importantly, traceable. This should be the first mandate of any pipe scoping decision. It is known that the old cast iron pipes that supply most of the gas in the country are failing, corroding, and needing replacement. Why then enlarge a pipeline system which will be taking gas, supposedly, to inner city pipeline networks that are old and in danger of falling apart? Why not instead begin a massive replacement of the aging infrastructure before taking on a new one? And why add to an existing system that is not properly charted? There are thousands of miles of pipelines that are not properly mapped and many that are lost. Should we not locate them wherever they are, and before we add on more of them? And who is going to regulate and inspect this pipeline, the Constitution pipeline? New York State regulatory agencies are notoriously understaffed. And as to federal oversight, whenever one reads the acronym PHMSA for the U.S. Department of Transportation, Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, it is usually accompanied by the words limited or lacking, as in the following on the Pipeline Trust website. PHMSA's lack of regulatory guidance for pipeline facility response planning, and PHMSA's limited oversight of pipeline emergency preparedness. And then there is the exclusionary rule, which cannot improve matters. Federal inspection rules exclude areas where federal regulation is rural, when there are 10 houses or less along a mile of pipeline. This would describe many of the properties in my town of Franklin, New York, currently on the proposed Constitution pipeline route. This is outrageous. We seem to be caught between the devil and the deep blue sea. An understaffed state inspection system for infrastructure that, like a highway, is truly federal because it is attached across state borders, and a federal regulatory agency known for its inadequacy. And to make matters even worse, as was reported in the Philadelphia Inquirer, as pipeline rules have become stricter, they have required companies to focus their greatest attention on what regulators officially term high consequence areas, places where the injury or death toll would be massive, and that is where they have stricter rules in place. This is madness, which is a nice way of putting it. It is actually criminal. I expect FERC to deal with prevailing and catastrophically lax oversight before approving any plans to any new pipeline construction. Also, I expect FERC to mandate that before any construction is begun, a system of continual, regular, well-trained inspection along the entire pipeline be instituted. I also expect FERC to mandate a system which can provide immediate on-site responders to complaints 24/7. In PA, we have spoken to people who have waited weeks and even months for a state inspector to respond to complaints about noise, smells, headaches, and so forth. Then you will need to mandate that there will be a special training given to all the local emergency services in dealing with accidents. We have volunteer EMS in our town and villages. They will need to be trained to to deal with all the possible and hitherto unknown, but now well-known problems, leaks, explosions, fires, and the other day, lost radioactive probes. Then you will need to mandate that there will be special training given to all the local road crews to recognize and do immediate remediation on sinkholes, sudden unknown discharges into creeks and reservoirs, and sediment runoff from hillsides, all of which have occurred in other places. There is a world-recognized pipeline integrity specialist, Professor Phil Hopkins, who says that 3 of the most potentially haunting aspects of the industry is the issue of an aging population of pipeline engineers. They're not being replaced, it seems. The lack of technical research, I guess the companies really aren't spending money on that, and the industry's current reliance on software as opposed to pure engineering. If this is true, what oversight has FERC provided to ensure that these haunting aspects are removed from our nightmares? It does not seem as if we as a nation are truly prepared to proceed in any way with the Constitution pipeline, much less the development of a huge new gas infrastructure such as the fracking of the Marcellus Shale.
Catherine Dawson. I live in the town of Guilford in Shenango County. I've lived in Shenango County for 33 years. I've had deep roots here. As an Army brat, I never lived anywhere longer than 3 years. I lived in many of the states in the 1940s where fracking now occurs: Texas, Colorado, New Mexico. I lived in New Mexico in the 80s, in the 90s, the 70s and the 90s. And I've traveled through many of the other states: Pennsylvania, Wyoming, Utah, Montana. Spent a lot of time in the Rockies. We used to drive across the country 2 or 3 times, as my father was an Army officer, and that's how we got from one assignment to another. I've been very close to these places. I lived in dire poverty in Shenango County for 15 years. I understood what Scarlett O'Hara, at the end of Gone with the Wind, she began to plant, and I planted a lot of tomatoes. And I planted a lot of food, and I didn't have money, but there was always good food, good water, and clean air, except when they burned people burned their garbage in their furnaces in town. Otherwise, it was okay. I left the country in 1997 to teach in New York City and build up some income and pay off debt, and I did that. And I bought an investment property where my daughter now lives with 2 children. She has a shallow well, I have a shallow well. I wanted to buy a very expensive property, about $300,000 property, because of the 35 acres that we had walked on for 33 years. But however, when I retired in 2009, that's when I found out about fracking. And I have nightmares, I would say 3 times a week, about things exploding unexpectedly. The very friendliest types of objects explode. So I have a little rap here. Up here, upstate New York, I be needing a High Plains drifter. Ashamed. You know that gunslinger helped out the single mom on the plains. We all be needing High Plains drifters. Nay, dozens of High Plains drifters and 29 chains to run off, run out those natural gas mafia, corporosi, capitalisti dello Stato, coming to take us out with their legal chemicals and put us on a terrorist list as they make mega bucks for India, China, Japan, Norway, and ye old Americani investors. SOW is our new SOS, and it don't spell female pig. It taps out. Save our water, save our water, save our water. Rap this and rap on and pass the message on. Natural gas ain't the clean energy, that's the corporate lie. I'll make this a cut to the chase here. I was influenced by my time in the city. I really didn't like rap, but it got in there. And I wrote that in 8 minutes. I mean, it just came to me. I oppose the pipeline on the basis I am a bi-regional person, New York City. I go there once a month, and I live here, have family here. And I oppose the pipeline for all the reasons that people gave, that it relates to hydrofracking. It will help hydrofracking come to New York State. But I oppose it also that it will bring radon-laced gas from the Marcellus Shale and cause countless deaths in New York City from the radioactivity. I've seen this, reports documented by professors at Hamilton College, etc., that the gas on the Marcellus Shale is radioactive. And it only takes 5 to 7 hours for it to get to New York City, not enough time for the radioactivity to dissipate. I also oppose it because of the locally for the extreme environmental devastation that will disrupt natural habitat and threatens death to people who live within 2,000 feet. They are subject to the infrared radiation in the case of an explosion. I mean, people I don't need to address, everyone else has addressed in great detail. But I will also speak on the compressor stations. It will raise the incidence of asthma. Fumes will cause rashes, nosebleeds. Calvin Tillman, mayor of Dish, Texas, I don't know why it took him so long. He finally moved out of there. His kids were having nosebleeds every night, little children, 7 and 9 years of age. Just to add the issue of hydrofracking, Cornell dissertation recently reported that in Pennsylvania, birth rates are much lower, I think 25% lower. Well, birth rate is very important in infants. So if anyone is expecting to have children, this is not, you don't want to be living in Pennsylvania. Well, thank you very much.
Lonnie Marsh.
Hi, I'm Lottie Marsh, M-A-R-S-H. I live in Delaware County and I love my 200-acre farm. Our farm borders Cars Creek, has 3 ponds, wetlands, NOFA certification on a 1,000-bush blueberry field. It is a beautiful habitat to enjoy, a nature preserve for birds and animals, a treasure which we saved 25 years for, a treasure which is in the proposed pipeline corridor. I am requesting a cumulative impact study be completed on all the small, low-yielding 2 to 5 gallon per minute, yet important springs used as drinking water supplies for both dwellings and livestock uses. The source and recharge areas for these water supplies are typically fractured sandstone layers of the local bedrock in uplands, which in many places would be crossed by the proposed routes and would likely require blasting to achieve adequate burial depth. According to Delaware County Soil and Water, local experience with bedrock quarries has shown that disturbance of bedrock, even at relatively shallow depths, can change subtle groundwater flow patterns. Springs emanating from the bedrock can easily be contaminated or permanently dried up, and these water supplies can be very difficult to replace, if not impossible. There are so many other negative impact issues regarding this proposed pipeline. I find it unconscionable that we have to deal with an industry capable of generational genocide, destruction, and contamination of our land and water, an industry that is exempt from the Safe Drinking Water Act, the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the National Environmental Policy Act, the Superfund Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act, and the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. Even their ability to obtain adequate insurance is questionable, as is the motivation for this pipeline. The benefit of this pipeline will serve big business, the 1%, the gas companies. The people who want this pipeline and gas drilling want that lease, thinking they'll become shaleonaires. They are so blinded by the possible income, they can't rationalize what they will lose and what damage they will cause themselves and their neighbors by allowing gas companies on their property. Pipeline companies don't have to provide any type of references, pass any courses, show any safety record, report any past violations, or be competent. How is that possible? Companies in Pennsylvania have extracted so much gas, they have started shipping it out on its way overseas. The proposed pipeline will be for exportation. It is not local gas for local people. The profit is not ours. The damage left behind is ours. Gas companies and the frackers give no thought about our clean, delicious water, of our land, of fresh air, of our peace and quiet, of our community, of our livelihoods, of agriculture, of wildlife, of leisurely drives, of the night skies, of our way of life, of our dreams, of our health, of our future, of all of us. Don't allow our rural beauty to be turned into industrial wastelands. Don't be collateral damage for Williams. Say no to the pipeline.
Kathy McNulty.
Thank you for having this hearing. I'd like to concur with a lot of what's already been said. I'd like to underscore that there are 12 proposed pipelines for natural gas transmission from Pennsylvania to the eastern coast. All are pending approval and using the same target markets. One other line is also a Williams line and applying for interstate approval for domestic use. I believe this is duplicitous and will lead to the exportation of gas as outlined in Williams' communications with their own stockholders. I believe that Cabot Williams is telling landowners that the pipeline is not dependent on high-volume hydrofracking, while telling its stockholders that it's opening up new areas for drilling. All of this is being done with your complicity, FERC. You are better able than individual citizens to understand the half-truths and deceptions employed in this process. Young FERC representatives basically were apologists for the Cabot Williams Company agreeing that the Williams Central Station was not part of the project, when in fact it is. Citizens opposed to having their land run over by Cabot Williams suggested the I-88 corridor for the siting of the land. When we saw the new route, we found that it was running over 500 new properties, and we didn't want to shift the burden to others. Instead of looking at Cabot Williams as the perpetrators of theft and manipulators of the federal government for their own profit, they seek to divide landowners and foment disharmony in our communities. I believe, like others, that this project is being sited through rural properties, irregardless of the uses the owners have in mind, irregardless of the wishes of most of the rural residents who don't wish to live in an industrial environment and should be the arbiters of land use in their towns. If the project is intended to promote hydrofracking, then FERC should be required to do a cumulative environmental review of the entire effects of the industrialization of our communities. I object to the fragmentation. I object to the fragmentation of farmland. I object to the fragmentation of woodlands and natural habitat. This route goes right through the lands owned by the Nature Conservancy. It also traverses the secondary water source in my village, in my town, in the village of Sydney. I've heard numerous times tonight about them going through water sources in villages and other sensitive areas. What the heck kind of maps are these guys using? They're not doing their job at all adequately. I object to the deceit of planning to export gas while using FERC to take private land by eminent domain. I object to the introduction I object to the introduction of new routes without allowing extra time for citizens to understand the gravity and extent of this land usurpation. I object to FERC holding only 3 scoping sessions. Every town should be able to come to one. I object to valuing the land the same as you would for a lease when the pipeline precludes other uses for an unlimited time. Sale or lease is done with the understanding that the parcel of land could be used repeatedly in perpetuity for unlimited uses and could be transferred to descendants. Cabot-Williams will just ruin it and keep it forever. If this project is considered narrowly as transporting gas to Boston as originally proposed, why should New Yorkers or their legislators let Pennsylvania and Massachusetts run over New Yorkers with no benefit to them whatsoever? Cabot-Williams has stated that no community along the route is a large enough market to warrant tapping the line for use in New York, no matter what Mr. German says. How could our state allow us to be taken advantage of in this way? New York City was added as a market later in the process, and I believe only for public relations purposes, as there are multiple lines serving and proposed for New York City now. Why go north to get south? I believe this project should be denied because New Yorkers do not want it, and because, as proposed, the affected communities cannot use it. I believe this project should be denied because it is not needed because of the superfluity of existing and proposed new lines going to the markets by more direct routes. I believe this project should be denied because Cabot-Williams is not a trustworthy partner, neither presenting the project in its details nor its scope in an honest manner. I believe this project should be denied because neither Cabot-Williams nor FERC has any right to rezone huge swaths of New York industrial by decree. Thank you.
Susie Winkler.
Susie Winkler, Burlington Flats, New York. I hope FERC takes into consideration the quality of the applicant's record in the state of Pennsylvania as you review their permit application, because at the very least, Cabot and Oil Gas's record is deplorable. I ask that you do a study on the applicant's safety record. I want FERC to research all the applicant's violations, every one of them. I want to find out what they were fined and what they actually paid. I also want you to determine from your findings of the records what sort of environmental damage and degradation we can expect along the 120-mile corridor. I believe that you'll find that the applicant has no intention of being a good neighbor. Our community deserves a good neighbor. We don't want a picnic. We don't want a rec center. We want our safety. According to the articles that I'm going to give to whoever I give them to when I leave, safety is not something that Cabot and Oil do. Additionally, I would like to address the following questions. How were the boundaries for the study area for the project identified? How were the range of alternatives generated for the project? 3, have you included existing utility line right-of-ways in the alternatives, and if not, why? 4, I'm concerned about the quality of the baseline environmental data that will be collected in order to weigh and balance the impacts of each of the alternatives. I want to know how the collecting is done, who is collecting. I want to know if the data will be spot checked, and by who it will be spot checked so that it will be accurate. I want to know what kind of resource mapping will be provided to the general public. And I want you to know that none of us want to be here. We've been at this for years. I don't want this gas. I want solar power on my house, but I'm waiting to build it because I'm afraid to build of what you're about to bring here. I ask you to take into consideration all of our lives. And lastly, before I go, there are people here who are property holders on the line that haven't spoken. You've missed them. So please make sure they all speak.
Thank you.
Thank you for holding this hearing. Not enough, but thank you for this one. My name is Eugene Marner. I'm from Franklin in Delaware County. We, the citizens of New York State and Pennsylvania, are under attack. And it's your job as agents of the federal government paid by our tax dollars to defend us. We are under attack by a greedy horde of terrorists who want to tear up our soil, blow up the bedrock on our mountain ridges, and bury amongst us a pipeline carrying a lethal explosive gas. In my town of Franklin, the pipeline will pass across a ridge which drains on one side to the Susquehanna River and on the other to the Owleyout Creek, which is a tributary of the Susquehanna. Cabot Williams asked us to believe that they're going to do all this digging and blasting without damaging our aquifers and contaminating our water and the water of the millions downstream of us along the Susquehanna River who depend upon that stream for drinking water, for life itself. FERC must examine the geology of the region, the relation of the bedrock to the aquifers, and the potential for contamination of both aquifers and streams. Furthermore, the proposed pipeline route crosses one of the most important eastern flyways for migrating raptors. FERC must examine the impact of the pipeline not only on birds but on all wildlife for whom habitat will be fragmented. Why have Cabot Williams chosen to put a pipeline right through the agricultural center of New York State, where dairy farms, orchards, vineyards, and tourism are vital economic activities? They claim that they want to take the gas to eastern markets. As others have noted, why then do they not simply use the existing Millennium and Tennessee pipeline rights of way, which are close to the starting point, and actually go from west to east to where they say the gas needs to go? The pipeline under discussion here goes from south to north and not to the markets Cabot Williams claim they expect to serve. That being so, it seems obvious that the pipeline is being constructed through this virgin territory so that the gas companies will be able to move the gas they hope to extract from the leased properties along the route of this pipeline. That means that the pipeline will eventually be accompanied by many compressor stations, gathering lines, well pads, wastewater ponds, massive truck traffic and road damage, toxic chemicals, horrific health impacts, and all the rest of the well-documented destruction that comes with hydraulic fracturing. FERC must examine the impact of these activities on our area, since the pipeline will bring them on. Of course, Cabot Williams deny that this pipeline is intended to move fracked shale gas from New York to market. We're full up, they say, fully booked for 5 years. A FERC representative at one of the open houses told me that all you need to see is a contract for transporting gas, and then you will believe that the pipeline is not intended to enable the fracking of New York State. Forgive me, but that is not putting on the public service mantle of a regulator, but rather the dunce cap of the village idiot. If you do your job and regulate this pipeline, you must know what you are regulating, and FERC must thoroughly explore the claims of Cabot Williams that this pipeline is not intended to enable the fracking of New York. If I were to take a jug of chemicals used in hydrofracking and pour them into the Susquehanna River, I would quite rightly be arrested and probably charged with terrorism. Yet this terrorism is precisely what these invaders are threatening to do to us and what they have already done to neighboring Pennsylvania and indeed to the Susquehanna River. This pipeline will scar 120 miles of countryside, industrialize a rural area, endanger the water supplies and health of the citizens, and impoverish all the landowners whose property will become uninsurable and unsellable. FERC must examine the economic consequences to the people who live in the areas to be despoiled by this pipeline. It seems obvious that an unbiased study of the environmental and economic impacts of this proposed pipeline must result in denial of the permit, and I call upon you to do so.
name is April Leggett. I live in Afton. Leggett is Leggett. I'll be very brief. One of my biggest concerns as the chairman of the Flood Mitigation Committee here in Afton is that the Susquehanna River and its basin is the largest, most flood-prone river, not in the county of Shenango, not in the state of New York, but in the entire country. The Susquehanna River floods, creating, on average, $150 million of damage a year. We also have hurricanes here. We also have earthquakes here. All of those can create damage to pipelines, and that is a concern I wanted to stress. There are many others, they've already been addressed, but I want to point out those very serious ones that I have concern about, among others. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hazen Reed.
Can you hear me? My name is Hazen Reed, and I live in East Meredith, New York. With my family, my wife Susan Muther,
Would you please speak directly into the microphone?
and my 2 6-year-old boys who have been very patiently waiting and listening to this commentary. I thought it important for them to hear the kind of things that are being said in their land. I thought it important for them to hear what these gentlemen, these people, want to do to their land. I thought it important that their governing body see them in person so that they knew exactly who they were voting against or hopefully for. I am concerned for the well-being of our community, and I am concerned for the opportunities for my boys. What I really want to know is, will FERC allow history to repeat itself? Inferior education, below average graduation rates, non-local workers, increased crime rates, exhausted public services, destroyed local infrastructure, devastated natural environments, skyrocketing cost of living, crushing housing costs, constricted economic diversity. Of the hundreds of studies of gas pipelines and extraction, 2 examples stand out. Colorado suffered a boom-bust development cycle in the 1970s and the early 80s, when industry abruptly stopped work on May 2nd, 1982, what you, I'm sure, all know as Black Sunday. 5 counties experienced drastic repercussions and have yet to recover, over 30 years ago. Similarly, the community of Sublette County, Wyoming, was told in a 1998 environmental impact study to expect 1 transmission line and a total of 400 wells over the next 20 years. Over 400 wells were drilled in the first 3 years of that project. 3,100 more have since been drilled. Dozens of additional collection lines have been added. Who's lying to who? A 2007 independent study of Sublette found the population expanded 24% from 2000 to 2006, 4 times the national rate. Enrollment in local schools dropped, suggesting new residents were all transient. Rental fees increased by 90%, making it impossible to find housing. Damaged local roads increased in serious felonies, emergencies, arrests, all taxed local services. Residents now leave, citing regularly quality of life issues. Lost economic diversity, reduced local tax revenues, all contribute to a negative climate. In June 2012, economists at The Ohio State University studied boom-bust cycles such as these in gas transportation and development. They said, and I quote, "To avoid the vicious cycle of the resource bust, you must apply an appropriate level of severance taxes on companies that extract and transport shale gas. Use these funds collected to pay for both the immediate costs of industrial activity and development, as well as long-term costs, particularly to help boost education and economic diversification." They go on to stress that a boom in one sector of the economy, such as shale gas and oil extraction and transportation, leads to sudden growth and low-skill but proportionately high wages. Young workers, often high school students, take these gas jobs instead of completing school, instead of taking advanced courses, and instead of advanced study. Other industries typically avoid such regions like these because the workforce is both unskilled and yet demanding high wages. In the case of the Constitution pipeline, the public must be assured that all cumulative costs are paid for by the industries that are benefiting from this resource. We ask FERC to study and to provide on an annual basis public reports covering the cumulative cost of reduced economic diversity made by the quashing of other industries, reduced graduation rates from local high schools, and related educational underperformance issues, as well as affected services and infrastructure that you've heard about here tonight. FERC, require Constitution Pipeline and all companies involved in gas extraction and transmission to make this region one of educational excellence, a success story, instead of one more in the history of devalued land and wasted human potential. Thank you.
Peter Donnelly will come on up. We need a moment while the court reporter changes his paper. If you would, just wait just one moment, please.
Good evening, and I'm glad I waited. My name is Peter Donnelly. I live at 445 Prosser Hollow Road in Davenport. 6 years ago, my wife and I purchased 11 acres with the intent of building our dream house with the plan of retiring here in Davenport. I've been working almost every weekend for the past 6 years, and I'm almost finished. I've named the property Seven Ridges. When I sit on my deck, my view is of 7 different ridge lines. I will now change the sign to 7 ridges and a pipeline. I have learned more here tonight than I can contribute. The question of why the pipeline here has always bothered me, but thank you to a well-versed group of people, I understand why now. I wanted to bring a few items up that I wanted to address. Property values going down because of the pipeline and the loss of total use of my property. Yet I will always have to pay property taxes at full value. I am concerned with the total lifetime of the pipeline. What if the pipeline goes dormant? 10, 20, 30 years from now, things will change. Gas will not be in demand. What happens to the pipeline? A dormant pipeline needs just as much maintenance. Who will do that maintenance on a dormant pipeline? The answer is no one. I have been told there will be no fracking, but there appears to be no guarantees. In fact, it probably is inevitable. Fracking will occur. Fracking will definitely occur. I also wanted to make a statement on easement negotiations. You were urged to get on board early to get the best deal. In fact, I received mail from FERC stating once eminent domain takes effect, your negotiation value is worthless. Eminent domain means pennies on your dollar. Eminent domain means robbery. Robbery of your property values, robbery of your rights. In my opinion, this is a lose-lose proposition and adds no value to the citizens of Delaware County, but will cause discourse between neighbors, friends, and family. Thank you.
Thank you.
Judy Robertson. Judy Robertson. Kim Michaels.
Hi, my name is Kim Michaels, Kimmichels. I'm a landowner. My family and I own 97 acres. I'm pretty appalled by the threat to our health and homes and rural way of life that is being not only tolerated, but endorsed by some government officials. I've done quite a bit of research over the last 3 years, and my concerns with the pipelines start with the products that will be carried through them. Natural gas sounds so innocent, and if left undisturbed, it probably is. According to studies by Tracy Bank and Lauren Fortson of the University of Buffalo, the Marcellus Shale natural gas reservoir is enriched in uranium and other redox-sensitive materials. Fracking may alter pH and EH conditions, causing many of these metals to become locally immobile within the subsurface. In addition, when the millions of gallons of water used in hydraulic fracturing come back to the surface, it could contain uranium contaminants, potentially polluting streams and other ecosystems and generating hazardous waste. The uranium and the hydrocarbons are in the same physical space and are not just physically, but also chemically bound. That, I would think, is a very real concern, that the natural gas that's going through these pipelines contain uranium. And in addition, their daughter products. That's pretty frightening. Especially when you consider the fact that these pipelines are notorious for leaking. I noticed Mike German came up earlier talking about how their company is so great and no harm has ever come to anyone. I hear all the time like, oh, everything's so safe, regulations are so great on the pipelines. I checked into them a little bit because they wanted to have their pipeline go through our town of Coventry. And in 2010, they had to repair 139 leaks, replacing 358 service lines and 6.5 miles of gas main. 2009, they had to repair 190 leaks, replacing 459 services and 10.6 miles of gas main. And, this is one company. You hear this over and over again, state after state, the story is the same. And unless somebody calls them on it, they don't bother to fix the leaks if they don't have to. and they're often given all kinds of time to take care of it. In addition to uranium and thorium, another major concern, and that I'm surprised you never hear about, is hydrogen sulfide gas. Berkeley University had done studies on this, and there are case after case involving oil and gas wells, compressor stations, with releases of hydrogen sulfide gas. In a document from PG&E, who, by the way, is still operating despite that huge scandal lawsuit with the Aaron Brockovich case. I read that they were actually in Pennsylvania now. That's pretty horrifying. They pay a fine, and what they did to those people is a crime. Why are they not in jail? Why are they even allowed to still operate? Well, mainly, I just want to draw your attention to the whole issue of hydrogen sulfide gas. The health effects, for starters, it's highly flammable when it comes in contact with air, it's explosive. I don't know if that's what causes the explosions in the gas lines, but it's a huge issue. The health effects are numerous. In a single breath, if the concentrations are high enough, you can die in one breath. If somebody tries to give you mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, they could end up suffering the health effects too. They actually according to PG&E, this is actually just something that's actually contained within the natural gas going through their pipelines on a regular basis. The gas industry tries to control this with the use of biocides, but apparently it's like bacterial and chemical reactions that make the wells go sour, which can happen at any time during the life of the well. They've been using biocides, which is environmentally unsafe, very expensive. It can cost up to $50,000 per gas well for the gas industry. Now there's something new: the use of bacteria and bacteriophages to try and control this. That's even more frightening, I think, than the biocides. Now you're adding all kinds of mass amounts of bacteria and bacterial viruses into the equation. Bacteria evolve very quickly. God only knows what in addition to all these chemicals and radioactive materials and heavy metals, now we've introduced massive amounts of bacteria and bacterial viruses into the equation. The whole thing is just absolutely frightening. And on the issue of the exploding pipelines and the pipeline industry, I just wanted to quote a man by the name of Frank King. He says, "They lie, they're arrogant, and they're outrageous." This man is from Bellingham, Washington. There were children playing in a park when one of these natural gas pipelines exploded. Everybody had told them how safe it was and everything. These children, when this happened, the heat was so intense, their bodies turned orange. Their skin was actually dripping off their fingers. Some of these kids lived for 14 hours in horrible pain before they died. The one thing this man had asked was that his son had not died in vain. I hope that you'll pay attention to that story, the horror that this man went through, and not let it happen here or to anyone else. There's so many things that in your position you are aware of. I'm asking you, begging you if I have to, be a whistleblower. You may end up losing your job, but you'll be saving a whole lot of people.
Thank you.
Hannun. I am a small farm owner and tax-paying landowner from Trout Creek, Delaware County, New York. First of all, I'd like to voice my displeasure on behalf of all of the disenfranchised residents of Delaware and Otsego County, New York. We'd like the FERC to immediately add a separate scoping hearing in Delaware County. We'd also like to see a separate Otsego County scoping hearing added immediately to the list as well. We'd like the FERC to show sensitivity in this matter and give ample time for preparation for those two proposed hearings. There is something in the government called reasonable accommodation, and reasonable accommodation must be adhered to in respect to the disenfranchised residents of Delaware and Otsego counties of New York. My issue I speak to tonight has to deal with an environmental impact study in the area between Otsego County and Delaware County along the 121-mile proposed pipeline route. This area is of particular concern because it seems to be in the affected areas of both of the published proposed routes for the project. I specifically referred to the area in and around Monkey Run Road in the Davenport East Meredith area. I object to this project because the Emmons Pond Bog is on the National Register of a Nature Preserve. Beavers have begun returning to the region for the first time in nearly 15 years. And it is widely speculated that a pipeline constructed through the region would certainly spell the end of the beavers at that point. Lilies, indigenous orchids, and other vegetation unique to that region would also become extinct. What I request from the FERC is a comprehensive study on that region with a special concern to the Monkey Run Road area, and I would like to know exactly which species we are eliminating. Beavers, bats, and birds unique to that area need to be included in the study. And I would like the study to be a cumulative impact study, including future construction on this 30-inch open access 121-mile line. Please give the extent of the estimated endangerment with regard to the following. A, pipeline construction, including any blasting and dynamite needed for the rock in that region and the effects on that region at the time of completion. Future speculation in the way of drilling, which includes gathering lines and well pads, and as well as evaporating storage ponds and their effects on the bog region when they are completed. C, compressor stations and construction of those compressor stations and the impact on the air quality in the bog when the compressor stations are completed and constructed. And D, any and all roadway and access way construction and the elimination of trees and shrubs and all vegetation removed that is unique to this particular nature preserve and the effects on that region. Beavers are returning to the Emmons Pond Bog, and the Cabot-Williams partners are coming through with a useless pipeline to disrupt this beautiful nature preserve. We, the concerned residents of Delaware County, offer as an alternative the use of the existing lines already in place along the northern parts of Pennsylvania, which will easily and expeditiously carry the Susquehanna, Pennsylvania product to New York City and the Boston markets. There is already in existence a current New York line which also carries product to the same markets. Those aforementioned lines in Pennsylvania and New York are not fully subscribed, and we see no reason to add another one. I offer the same study sources previously stated and offered as study agents by the exquisite Irene Klein just moments ago, and Suco, Hardwick, and Delaware Otsego Audubon Society as sources for the study. The National Audubon Society has spelled doom for this region if a pipeline is constructed through this area. We would like to keep it as a nature preserve, and that is why we speak on behalf of the beavers of Delaware County, New York tonight. Beards.
Hello, I'm Robert Beards from Masonville, landowner. And I want to thank the panel for coming in tonight. Being as patient as you have, got a real antagonistic audience here, and I hope you'll be patient with me. Been very, very calm up there, that's pretty good, but I might be the most antagonistic of all, actually, because I usually find that with these kind of panels, of government panels, inspections, regulatory commissions, stuff like that, that it's really just to placate an annoyed public. And basically what usually happens is that the regulatory agencies, in most cases, FDA, CDC, SEC, as we all know, they're already captured by the very entities that they're purported to regulate. I even see our transcriber here nodding his head in agreement, which I appreciate. The food czar of the country, in charge of our food supply, former Monsanto executive, perfect example. Forget about the SEC. Okay, so I have no reason to believe that whatever you write up is going to pay heed to anyway. I understand that one of you is actually a private contractor. I don't know how long he's going to be even employed over there. And that the other ones, basically, your panel is 4 levels below the commissioners who are going to make this decision, this political decision, okay? If FERC has any intention to do anything other than what the huge and very politically connected gas industry desires, it's probably already decided what's going to happen, no matter what the public says here tonight. And they've had some pretty good arguments, but that doesn't matter because logic doesn't prevail in these cases. Okay, that's just the state of things these days. But anyway, I've got a few quick notes that I made here. Before we ram another giant fossil fuel project over fellow citizens, consider the judgments awarded against ExxonMobil for the Valdez have yet to be paid. The coast of Alaska is still littered with oil. Forget about the Gulf of New Mexico. And the stories that they say, oh, it's great now, eat the shrimp. Enjoy those. Right off the bat, the lovely spokeswoman for Williams Cabot started right off today, disingenuously telling us that so many decahectares of gas or whatever it is going to supply 3 million New Yorkers with that amount of gas. However, pretty much, they're not going to give me a sworn affidavit that that gas is for New Yorkers because they're going to want to export it. Otherwise, let's see that affidavit. Try to get Williams Cabot to give me a sworn affidavit that it's destined for New York. The other thing, the right-of-way. They're trying their best to go over existing right-of-ways. Well, what about the 88 corridor? Have it go right down 88. That way no private landowners are going to be affected. And we can choose whether we want to traverse that or not. We can stay clear of it if we feel it's safe or dangerous, or we can ride right over it if we think it's safe. The existing corridor already has the right-of-ways. The reason they try to avoid it, it's a lot cheaper to pay a landowner $5 or $15 a foot to own their land forever. That's incredibly cheap, considering the value of how many decahectares or whatever of gas, and the landowner still has to pay the taxes at full value. Insurance, take a look at the stockholder statements these gas companies put out. They're not insured. There's no guarantee that this is going to be insured. Who's going to cover this damage? They just have Bernanke print some more, I guess. Let's see, everybody's pretty much said stuff that I think, let's see, I might have a little bit left. Okay, if you're going to be around, I don't know where you guys are from. If it's daytime and sunny out there, you might want to look outside your car as you're driving around. Pretty much, no matter where your car is up here, when you look out the window, it's beautiful. That's why people stay here. That's why they live here. Just about every comprehensive plan, when they survey the township, people foremost want to preserve the rural nature of upstate New York. guess that's about enough to say. I hope you guys will write up a nice statement. I hope that you'll try to use the right of way that's already existing. If it's so safe and so great, hey, think about it. If there is an accident, where do you want the accident to be? In the middle of the woods somewhere, next to a few private homes? Or right on the highway where the emergency equipment get right to it? You can just put up a roadblock, nobody's bothered. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Rima Loeb. I live in Afton, or my land is in Afton, and I'm a landowner, yes. I've watched this kind of thing for 4.5 years. You cannot separate the pipeline from the material it's carrying, and from all of the activities extracting that material. I hope you look closely when you are in Pennsylvania and see not just what the gas corporations want you to see. Talk to some of the people who have suffered already the loss of interest of money in their homes and lands, even worse, the health effects. And there's a man from our DEC who was the well inspector who says it's not a matter of if the gas wells will leak, but when, and when our water will be impacted. Perhaps our children and grandchildren will live with this tension. Why? We paid for our land. We pay our taxes. We're all good citizens. This is an outrage. If eminent domain is used, it's a lie. It's not for the benefit of the public. It's for the benefit of the gas corporations and the politicians that sit with them. Furthermore, I want to offer a couple of facts that I haven't heard mentioned yet. Gastown, fairly well-known corporation in Canada, has admitted publicly all pipelines and compressors leak. And what they leak is more than the methane. You cannot live, and I'm quoting health authorities here, you cannot live near a pipeline or a compressor and not suffer negative health effects sooner or later. So what you're doing, in effect, is killing people. It may take a year, it may take 10 years, maybe 20 or 30 years. Endocrine disorders, cancer, children with horrible, horrible asthma, that's been mentioned, And the gas here, as you've heard, much of it is radioactive. Now this is wrong. This is just wrong. We're counting on our government. We pay you folks. We pay our public servants, yes. That's still what it's supposed to be. We pay our public servants to protect us. And by the way, I don't know if you know, the Millennium had an interesting event about a month ago. You can build the best pipeline and compressor station in the world. Lightning hit that compressor station and it blew up. Fortunately, they were able to put out the fire in, I think it was 3 or 4 hours. Our volunteer firefighters can't do that. They can't even get to those areas. They're not allowed. And I wouldn't want them to be exposed in that way. This is wrong. You're taking a group of people, mainly rural, some smaller urban areas, taking a group of people and saying, we're worthless, we're nothing. We're just one more sacrifice zone. And if you let this pipeline go through, you're just as guilty as our governor or the governor of Pennsylvania or any of the others who don't have to live with it themselves. They don't have to watch their families suffer. Please do the right thing. Use the conscience that God gave you. Thank you.
Earl W. Conley.
I'm not Earl, but Earl has left.
Well, we have someone else.
I'm the next person in after Earl. Yes, that's me. My name is William Houston. I'm from the town of Union. The place where I live takes water from a well that is it's a shallow well underneath the Susquehanna River. And it's influenced by the river. I want to begin my testimony with 4 syllables. I encourage you to say it with me. A, O, M, and space. You know, there's very little that I can add that hasn't already been said. Life cycle impacts of the full shale gas build-out, cumulative impact study, the environmental impact assessment for the Constitution pipeline must include all essential components of a 121-mile, 30-inch, high-pressure pipeline. So I examined Williams/Cabot. I've examined their pre-filed proposal, and I found something really odd. Do you want to hear what it is? So I have some schooling, but basically this doesn't take a lot of schooling. This is basic physics, basic common sense. A pipeline has a lot of engineering involved with it, and a pipeline has certain components to it. One is the steel tubing, this long, or some pipelines aren't made of steel, they're made of other things, but basically the shell of the thing. Pipelines also require welds. That's part of the physics of it. So I looked at the design, and I'm looking for an initial compressor station, which is a required part of the design. You cannot move gas in a 30-inch high-pressure pipeline 121 miles without an initial compressor. And FERC accepted a defective proposal and did not blink an eye. What's up with that? These people, if we have a system of law, that's my basic question. Do we have a system of law? If we do, mean, I'm a Buddhist and a yogi, and I try to practice non-attachment, and I don't believe in jails. I don't believe in punishment. I don't think that's really appropriate because it's adding violence to violence. I don't think that really works. But if we have a system of laws, do we? These people are criminals. This project is illegal 100 different ways. They are building right now a massive site. They've got a measly little DP5 no impacts permit in Brooklyn Township, Pennsylvania, which just happens to line up perfectly with the beginning of their map of the Constitution pipeline. Huh! Oh, and by the way, what's the company that's building the compressor, that's got nothing to do with the Constitution? By the way, what's that missing component? The Constitution doesn't have an initial compressor? It's Williams! Oh, but it's a different branch of Williams. But it's a win-win deal. It's really a deal made in heaven. This other branch of Williams just happens to be building a compressor, and this other branch just happens to be building a 30-inch high-pressure 121-mile pipeline. Why don't we just get these two together? It's fraud! It's fraud! It's fraud! Do you understand that? Take this back in your report to your managers that are making these decisions. How many levels up? Taken back. This project, what's today's date? September 24th. Hear ye, hear ye. On this date, this project is dead. This project is done. Go back to Houston. You're not building a pipeline here. We're on to you. You're not building a pipeline here. It's done. Go back home. Go home. Go home. Go home. I do have some technical comments about the pipeline. About the... So, one of the interesting things about the Williams Central Station that's being built in Brooklyn, PA, like I said, it's illegal 100 different ways. One way is, I was over at my friend's house. She lives in the area. And you know what I witnessed? I witnessed a truck with a big trailer. It's a tri-axle. It's the biggest semi made, one of the biggest. It's a Kenworth tri-axle. You don't see tri-axles every day. It's a big truck. And it had a big trailer. And it was a dirt road. And on that trailer was a crane. The total weight of this truck and the trailer and the crane were 90 tons. You know what we did? We stopped them. And we said, where's your permit to go up a dirt road with a 90-ton truck? And you know what the guy did? He ran and he got in his truck and he drove off. And we have it all documented. We've got it all documented on tape. This project is illegal 100 different ways. Let me tell you another. These people have contempt for the law. They're criminals. If we have system of law, I think we do, then they're criminals. They have contempt for the law. And it is despicable that they call this thing the Constitution. It is a desecration of the sacred documents that define our democracy. They are subversive of democracy. We, the people, on this day demand that Williams Cabot cease and desist this illegal and unpermitted activity now. And we demand from you, FERC, that you uphold the law. And one more thing. This is more to do with that Williams Central Station, which is part of, it's an essential component. Are you hearing that? You're getting that? Of a 121-mile, 30-inch high-pressure pipeline. You need a massive compressor. And they just happened to leave it off. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was an honest mistake. Just like on the on the Millennium Pipeline, which is, oh, by the way, very similar. High pressure, very, I think it's around 120 miles, maybe a little longer. And it was built when? 2005, when they did the big expansion of the Constitution? It just so happens they are proposing, you all probably know about this. The Millennium Pipeline is proposing 2 new compressor stations, one in Hancock on Hungry Hill Road and the other in Minisink. These are massive compressors, 10 to 15,000 horsepower compressors. So what? Was it a design flaw? I want to talk to the Millennium engineers. Why did they just happen to forget that they needed these compressors all along? Is it a design flaw? Or is there something going on, like fracking, that they want to start charging Millennium with fracked gas from PA and from New York? Yeah, and that's what this thing's going to do. And if you ask these people, they're like, oh, we're going to have one, I guess that compressor all the way up in Schoharie County, I guess it's going to suck the gas like a big straw, 121 miles, because they left out the initial compressor. That's absurd. And the other thing is, they are applying for a minor use permit. They're doing an air quality permit for this Williams Central Station. This is very relevant to this project. They are using obsolete conversion factors for greenhouse gas emissions for methane. They're using a factor of 21 times, and I believe it's over a 100-year time horizon. And in reality, it's 105 times over a 20-year time horizon. So what they've done is a major use permit. I can't even figure this out, but these are the numbers. 100,000 tons of greenhouse gas emissions per year. That defines the threshold for a major use permit. 100,000 tons of CO2 equivalent. And Williams Cabot came in with their air quality permit, and they said, well, it's not 100,000 tons. By the way, they're using the obsolete conversion factors. It should be from 21 to 105. It's like 5 times, 1/5 of what it should be. They're saying it's not 100,000 tons per year. It's 98,801. Somebody else knows it. That's cool. Right? It's in the Navy we had an impolite expression, but it's a red hair short of a major use. When I think of a minor use, a minor source of greenhouse gases, I think of a lawnmower. 100,000 tons per year. So what they're doing is, this is 101 ways that this project is illegal. This is what they're doing. They're segmenting the project before they've got the plan in their hands. They've got brilliant engineers, very highly paid, the best grads from the engineering schools, and they designed this thing, and they said, their big head down there in Houston, he said, you know what? Give me that pair of scissors over there. And we're just going to cut this right off the beginning of it. We don't want this as part of the whole thing, because these FERC people, they're pretty smart, and they're going to see that this thing needs to be scoped as part of the Constitution project. So let's just cut that off right now, and maybe the people at FERC will be sleeping and they won't even realize it. We listen very carefully. We, the people, do declare on this date, this project is dead. Cease and desist right now. Cease and desist. Thank you.
evening, can you hear me? Hi, my name is Margaret Lettis. I'm a resident of the town of Middlefield, Otsego County. I'm here tonight to say I'm against the pipeline for various reasons that have been said already this evening. I've been in the fight against fracking for about 3.5 years now. If this pipeline goes in, it will be the infrastructure for the beginning of fracking in New York State, which the majority of residents do not want because it is not safe, period. The pipes for getting the gas out of Pennsylvania are already in place. They're already there. The Millennium is down there. Somebody else can help me out with the names, but we do not need this pipe up here. It's a fraud, it's a scam. That's what's going on. Williams Cabot, I've been to Pennsylvania several times. I've seen the destruction of Dimmock and the surrounding area. It's enough to make you puke. They're lying to all of us. Upstate does not want fracking. We do not want it here. We don't want it in Pennsylvania either. Having the pipeline go through New York State is aiding and abetting in the raping of Pennsylvania. I do not want to be part of it. I don't want my granddaughter, who is 2 years old, to be part of this, or anybody else in my family or my friends in New York State to be part of this. Thank you very much. I do have one more thing. We need another place to have another meeting. It's almost 11 o'clock. I have to be at work at 7 a.m. Thank you.